I'm sitting in the automatic car wash, the kind with those big blue brushes that just slam against the windshield. I'm just staring at my phone. I had maybe 3 minutes of peace before I had to go get the kids and deal with dinner. And then my phone buzzes a Venmo notification. $40 from a woman named Sandy L. The caption says, "For the special appetizer." First thought wasn't even who she was. It was more like, are you kidding me? Now I have to figure out who Sandy is and why she's paying us for food. All while wondering if I can actually return these expensive leggings. I'm wearing them right now, and they've already started pilling between the thighs. After one wash. I paid over $100 for these, and they already look like I've been scrubbing floors in them. So I'm just sitting there in the suds, looking at that winking emoji, and I just feel I don't know. Just tired. Like I can't handle one more thing today. The Wi-Fi has been acting up at the house too, which is just great. Anyway, I get home, and there's a neon pink sticky note on the front door, Mrs. Gable from next door. It says, "Kayla, the trash cans have been out since Tuesday. It's making the curb look cluttered." Thanks. The cans are still there, right where Mark left them. I walk inside and he's just in the living room scrolling on his iPad. "Mark, why are the trash cans still out?" He didn't even look up. "Oh, I thought you were doing them this week." "I did them last week. We've rotated every Tuesday for 10 years, I told him. He finally looks at me and just shrugs. "I must have forgotten. I've had a hell of a week, Kay. Just leave it." I just stared at him. Didn't have the energy to fight. I went into the kitchen and tried to run the disposal, because there was this sour smell coming from the drain like old cabbage, and it already dumped a whole box of baking soda down there. And it did nothing. The disposal just made this guttural grinding sound and stopped. "Mark!" I yelled. "The disposal is jammed again." He walks in, looks at the sink for 2 seconds and goes, "I don't know, honey. You're usually better at the plumbing stuff. Maybe just call a guy." I stood there for a minute. If I'm 50 years old, for God's sake. I spend my mornings taking these collagen supplements that taste like chalk and cost a fortune, not even know if they work. And then I spend my afternoons rebalancing our 401k, because the market dipped and Mark doesn't understand the interface. And now I'm fixing the sink. Spent 20 minutes with a flashlight and a coat hanger, digging out a piece of plastic. Pretty sure it came from one of those healthy keto snacks Mark tried for 3 days last month. He'd bought a ton of almond flour and coconut oil, made a huge mess, and then just stopped. Didn't even clean the bowls. I found one under the sink 3 weeks later, with dried batter that had basically turned into cement. Anyway, while I'm cleaning the sink, I remember the Venmo. I waited until he was in the shower and grabbed his phone. I know, but I was just exhausted. I opened the app and saw the transaction from Sandy L. And then I just started scrolling, no texts. Just Venmos for the drinks, for the hotel parking, for the special appetizer, all from Sandy L. All over the last 3 months. I'm standing there, dripping sink water on my leggings, and I'm not even crying. I'm just annoyed. Annoyed that I'm the one who has to find this and that I have to figure out what to do. While I'm wondering if I should move more assets into index funds before the quarter ends. Friday night was the monthly church gathering. Big potluck where everyone pretends to get along. I spent 4 hours making a gluten-free casserole because half the committee is suddenly sensitive to wheat. I was the one coordinating the sign-up sheet too, because the last person had a family emergency that lasted 6 months. Mark was acting totally normal, chatting with the guys, laughing, talking golf. Full great husband mode. He even helped me carry the casserole in, which was a first. I was by the refreshment table, pouring punch when Brenda came up to me. Brenda is head of hospitality, and she's known us forever. She had that look on her face. You know the on where she wants to tell you something but doesn't want to be the one to say it. "Kayla, honey," she says. "I didn't know you and Mark were visiting the coast so often lately." I stopped pouring. "The coast? What do you mean, Dot?" Brenda blinked. She looked over at Mark, who was telling a story to some guys and gesturing with a chicken wing. "Well," Brenda leaned in. "I saw Mark at the seafood grill in Cape May last month. He was with a lovely woman. A blonde." I didn't want to say anything because I assumed it was a business trip, but he seemed very settled in. I didn't say anything, just looked at her. Then I looked at Mark. "Cape May?" I asked. He told me he was in Scranton for the regional audit. Brenda made a clicking sound with her tongue. Oh, well, maybe it was a different Mark, but he was wearing that blue linen shirt you bought him for his birthday. The one with the anchors. My stomach felt cold, but it wasn't a panic attack. It was just there it was. I looked down at the table and saw some flyers for the church retreat. I walked over to Mark. No scene, no yelling. I just leaned in and whispered, "Who the hell is Sandy?" Mark froze. Literally stopped mid-sentence. He didn't even look at me. He just stared at the chicken wing in his hand for 5 seconds. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said. "Brenda saw you," I said. "In the blue linen shirt." He finally looked at me. He didn't look guilty. He looked irritated. "Kayla, don't do this here. You're imagining things. Brenda is 80. She probably saw some guy who looked like me. You're just stressed with the house stuff. You're acting erratic." He said it so calmly. Like I was the one losing it. I didn't argue. I just turned around and went to the coat closet for my purse. When I reached for my bag, I saw a manila envelope sticking out of the side pocket of Mark's garment bag. He brought it along because he claimed he had a dinner meeting right after the gathering. I pulled out a piece of paper. It was a lease agreement for a small condo in a town I'd never heard of, dated 2 months ago. Tenant was Mark Mason, cosigner was Sandiel. So I'm just standing there in this tiny church closet holding the lease. And Mark is just staring at me. He didn't even try to grab it at first. He just did this long, exhausted sigh like I was the one being annoying. "What is this, Kayla?" he asked. I told him it was a lease for a condo in Oakhaven for some woman named Sandiel. I asked him why the hell he was co-signing a place there. He eventually took the paper from me. He didn't even look surprised. He just looked bored, I guess. He told me it was for a client. Apparently, Sandy is a client who needed a spot for some consultants, and the lease needed a local cosigner with a good credit score. He said he did it as a favor. Just a professional thing. I asked him if professional favors usually included weird Venmo payments for appetizers and hotel parking, because Iddy's seen the transactions. That's when he actually got irritated. He asked if I went through his phone and told me I was crossing a line. Then he started saying I've been acting crazy lately, and that I was obsessing and spying, and that it was unhealthy. I didn't even know what to say. It was just a lot to be called crazy while he's co-signing a condo for a client. We walked out of the closet and back into the potluck, and he just put his arm around me and started chatting with the youth pastor about some fundraiser. I could feel his hand on my hip, and I literally just wanted to shake it off. The ride home was just dead silence. I spent the whole time thinking about those leggings I bought. I decided I was going to drive them back to the mall on Monday, because the quality was just terrible. It just felt weird. Like, I can't even get a pair of pants to last a month. But my husband is out here managing some secret real estate thing. When we got inside, I went straight to the kitchen. The garbage disposal was still making that rattling sound. And nothing I did to fix it worked. I was just standing there staring at the drain when Mark walked in. "You're still thinking about the lease," he said. I told him I was thinking about the sink. Then he told me that was the problem, that I was simmering and making things tense in the house. He said it again. That it was just a business arrangement. Told me that if I couldn't trust him after 25 years, maybe I should look at why I was so insecure. He didn't help with the sink. He just went upstairs to decompress from the stress of the evening. Anyway, I did what I usually do. I started a list. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and started messing around with our retirement account because tech dipped again, and I wanted to move some things around. While the page was loading, I opened a new tab and searched Sandiel Oakhaven. Nothing, not really. But then I searched the address from the lease. It was a place called The Pines. I started clicking through everything. They don't know why, I just wanted to know everything. And I found a community newsletter that mentioned family day events. The next 3 days were kind of a blur. I was basically on autopilot. I took my supplements, did a few loads of laundry, and got another note from my neighbor about my hedge being over the property line. I just taped it to the fridge and ignored it. But every time Mark left the room, I was digging. I found his iPad. He thinks he's so great with passwords, but he uses the same one for everything our anniversary. I went into his deleted photos. He'd cleared them, but I checked the recently deleted folder. There were 4 photos, not of Sandy. It was a little girl, maybe 4 or 5. She had curly blonde pigtails and a little denim jacket. In one photo, she was on a swing set, and Mark was in the corner of the frame, laughing. He looked, I don't know, actually happy. I felt this weird buzz in my ears. I didn't even cry. Just this cold knot in my stomach. I took screenshots of everything and emailed them to a secret account I'd made 5 minutes earlier. Then I checked the bank statements. I usually handle the bills, but Mark has this separate account he manages for office expenses. I got into the portal while he was napping on Sunday. I scrolled through the last 6 months, every 2 weeks, like clockwork. 800 to the Pines management. I just sat there in the living room. It was totally quiet and I just stared at the screen, a condo, a woman, a kid. There was even a tiny tots tuition payment. I heard him wake up and start coming down the stairs. I closed the laptop fast and picked up my phone, pretending to read some random health article about almond flour. Hey, he said, yawning. You okay? You look a little pale. I told him I was fine and that I was just thinking about our 401k again. God, K. Can you just stop worrying about the money for 5 minutes? He said. He told me he had it under control and that I was always too wound up. He told me to just relax. He walked past me to get some water and patted my shoulder. It used to feel affectionate, but now it just felt like he was marking his territory. On Tuesday, I went to the mall to return those leggings. I stood in line at customer service, and the woman told me that since I'd worn them once, I couldn't get a full refund. While I was waiting, I pulled up the Tiny Tots Learning Center website. I went to the Our Staff page. There was a photo of the director. Bright, wide smile, blonde hair. Sandy, I didn't call her or anything. I just saved the photo. When I got home, the house smelled like the garbage disposal again. I tried the lemon vinegar trick, but it didn't work. I was just scrubbing the sink, and I realized I wasn't even angry. I was just calculating. Mark came home around 6 p.m. He looked stressed. He dropped his briefcase on the counter and told me he had to go back to Scranton this weekend for an audit. Said he'd probably be back Sunday night. Scranton, I said. That's funny. I didn't know Scranton had a family day at the Pines this weekend. He froze. Same as in the church closet. He didn't move for a long time. Then he slowly turned to look at me. He didn't even look guilty. He just looked cold. I don't know what you think you're doing, Kayla, he said. His voice was really low. He told me my obsession with his work was becoming a real problem for the marriage. He suggested I talk to a therapist, saying I was acting crazy and it was starting to scare him. He didn't even deny it. He just flipped it back on me. I didn't argue. I just stepped back and looked at him. The store wouldn't take the leggings back, I said. He just stared at me. What are you talking about, the leggings, I said. I didn't get my money back. I turned around and walked into the pantry to find the almond flour, leaving him standing there in the kitchen. Mark left for Scranton Thursday morning. He didn't even kiss me goodbye. He just grabbed his bag, told me to try and relax while he was gone, and walked out. As soon as his car pulled out of the driveway, I went straight to the home office. I was done guessing. I needed to see the papers. I started digging through the filing cabinet in the corner, the one he always called boring tax stuff, and told me to leave alone. His system was basically just shoving folders in wherever they fit. But I've spent 25 years organizing this house, so I knew where the gaps were. I found a locked firebox at the bottom. I didn't have the key, but Mark is predictable. He keeps the shed key under a fake rock, and the firebox key was taped to the underside of the desk drawer. The tape had gone all gummy and gross, sticking to my fingers. I hate when that happens. I spent 5 minutes trying to scrape the residue off my skin with a paperclip before I could even think about the lock. I started pulling everything out. I found a copy of our marriage certificate, but the seal looked off. It looked smudged, like it had been stamped by hand. I didn't even cry, I just felt cold. I kept digging and found some printed emails. They weren't from a client. They were from a woman named Carly Silva. Carly is Mark's mother. She lives in a gated community 3 towns over and spends her time complaining about her bridge club and going to spas. I always thought she was cold, but I figured that was just her personality. The emails were from 3 years ago. Wait, was it 3? No, looking at the date, it was actually 4 years ago. One said, Mark dear, I've handled the arrangements for the second property. The paperwork is processed. Make sure Kayla doesn't start poking around the accounts. She's too observant. I stared at the screen. Too observant. I spent the next hour scrolling. It wasn't just a condo in Oakhaven. There was a whole other life. A bank account in his name and some woman named Sandy. A trust fund for a child. And Carly helped him set it all up. She'd even wired him $10,000 to help with the move. I felt sick. I sat down on the floor in my leggings, surrounded by folders, realizing the woman I spent every Thanksgiving with for 2 decades helped my husband keep a secret family. I didn't call him. I got in the car and drove straight to Carly's house. I didn't call ahead. I pulled into her driveway and walked up to the front door. She opened it wearing a silk robe and holding a cup of tea. "Kayla," she said, "what are you doing here? Is everything all right?" "I found the emails, Carly." I didn't shout. I stood there for a minute on her porch. For a minute. I noticed her welcome mat was crooked, and it really bothered me. I actually stepped forward and kicked it straight with my heel before I looked back at her. Carly didn't flinch. She didn't even look shocked. She sighed and gestured for me to come inside. She had this look of pity on her face that made me want to scream. "I told Mark you'd find out," she said. "You've always been too focused on the details, Kayla." "It's exhausting details?" I asked. "He has a child. Another life you helped him." Carly sat down in her white linen armchair. "Now let's be reasonable. Mark is complicated. He loves you in his own way, but he has needs you couldn't meet. Sandy is a very sweet girl. She's flexible." I stood there. I couldn't even process that word. It felt like I was watching a movie. "Why?" I asked. "Why help him lie for years?" Carly took a sip of her tea. "Because the family image matters, Kayla. Divorce is tacky, especially at your age. We didn't want the neighbors talking, so we thought it was better to just manage it." She actually thought she was doing me a favor. This woman had treated me like a piece of furniture. "The marriage certificate," I said. "I looked at it. Why does it look fake?" Carly paused. She put the teacup down on the coaster and looked at me. "Oh dear," she said. "I guess Mark forgot to tell you that part." "Tell me what?" "The ceremony you had 25 years ago," Carly said, her voice flat. "It was lovely, truly. But the paperwork was never actually filed. There was a clerical error. Or maybe Mark just never got around to it." I felt like the air had been knocked out of me. I had to lean against the wall to keep from falling over. "What are you talking about?" I asked. "We've been married for 25 years. We have children. We have a joint 401k. Joint accounts are just paperwork, Kayla," Carly said. "But legally, you're not married. You never were. You've just been playing house." I couldn't say anything. The room started to spin. I wasn't even thinking about the heartbreaky. Was thinking about the legal side. The house, the assets. 25 years of building a life on a lie. If we weren't legally married, I had no claim to half of anything. I turned around and walked out. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't even close the door all the way. I got in my car and sat there. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from my banking app about a small dip in the market. I actually started laughing. I sat there laughing like a lunatic. Because I'd spent the last 3 years obsessing over our retirement accounts, and I wasn't even his wife. I drove home in a daze. When I got inside, the house felt wrong. I went to the kitchen and stared at the sink. I felt this sudden urge to clean. I spent the next 4 hours scrubbing every single surface in the kitchen. I used the strongest chemicals I had. I scrubbed the baseboards and the inside of the oven. I kept scrubbing until I could see my reflection in the granite. The smell of the bleach was overwhelming, and it started giving me a headache right behind my left eye. I tried to ignore it, but I kept thinking about how I'd run out of the good sponges and had to use one of those cheap, scratchy ones that just moves the grease around. Around 8 p.m. I sat down and opened my laptop. I started searching for the best divorce attorneys in the state and then I stopped. You can't divorce someone you weren't married to. The shock was gone and I just felt exhausted. I saw a bag of almond flour on the counter from some phase Mark went through and threw it in the trash. Then I started making a list. An inventory, everything I had paid for. Every cent I put into the mortgage. Every time I covered for him. I went through the bank statements again. But this time I wasn't looking for Sandy. I was looking for the money Mark had moved. I found a series of transfers, small amounts. Maybe 200 here, 500. There going into a private account I'd never seen. He'd been skimming from our shared savings for years. The garage door opened. He was back from Scranton a day early. I didn't move. I stayed at the table with the laptop open and the list in front of me. Mark walked into the kitchen. He looked fine. He was wearing that blue linen shirt, the one Brenda saw him in at the seafood grill. He had a bag of takeout in his hand. "Hey," he said, "I managed to wrap things up early. I got us some Thai food from that place you like. You look calm. Did you finally relax?" He tried to kiss my cheek. I didn't move. "I talked to your mother," I said. Mark stopped. He stiffened. "Oh," he said, "and how is Carly?" "She's very helpful," I said. "She explained the whole thing about the clerical error with our marriage license, and about Sandy, and the child." Mark didn't move for a long time. He just stood there, smelling like Thai food and expensive cologne. Then he slowly set the bag on the counter. He didn't apologize or cry, he just sighed. "Look, Kay," he said. "I was going to tell you eventually. But you're so high-strung. I didn't want to cause a scene. I thought, if I handled everything quietly, it wouldn't hurt you." "It wouldn't hurt me?" I asked. "I mean, look at your life," he said. "You're always worrying about the 401k, the trash cans, the neighbors. You're obsessed with the logistics. I figured you'd appreciate the stability more than the truth." "I'm not married to you," I said. "Well, technically no," he said. "But we've been together for 25 years. That's a commitment, isn't it?" "Why does a piece of paper matter so much?" "Because the piece of paper is what keeps me from being a stranger in my own house," I said. Mark shrugged. He walked over to the sink and looked down the drain. "The disposal is still making that noise, isn't it?" he asked. "I told you to just call a guy, Kay. You always try to do everything yourself, and you usually just make it worse." He turned around and started unpacking the Thai food, acting like it was just a normal Friday night. I looked at the list on my laptop, then at the man I'd spent half my life with. I didn't want to scream or throw the food at him. I just wanted him to be gone. I stood up and walked toward the hallway. "Where are you going?" he asked. "To find my passport," I said. I stopped at the door and looked back. "By the way," I said, "the dishwasher is still leaking. You should probably fix it." I walked out and closed the door, leaving him there with the pad thai. I found my passport in the bottom drawer of the vanity, shoved into one of those plastic folders with some old vaccination records for the kids. The drawer was sticking, so I had to really yank it, and I stood there for a minute staring at a photocopy of a flu shot from 2008. I didn't even cry. I wasn't shaking. I just had this weird cold need to get everything in order. I didn't go back into the kitchen. He couldn't deal with the Thai food or looking at Mark, so I just went into the guest room, closed the door and locked it. I spent the next few hours on my laptop, honestly just spiraling. I didn't go back to Sandy's Facebook, because I already knew she existed, so there was no point. I just started Googling things. Common law marriage, palimony, constructive trusts. Saw this shit I never thought I'd have to look up. Since we weren't actually married, a regular divorce lawyer wouldn't really work. I needed someone who handled high-asset separations for people who weren't technically spouses. I found a woman named Sarah Jenkins. Her website was boring, no stock photos of gavels, just a list of cases she'd won in civil court. I sent her an email around 11:30 p.m. and just laid it all out. The 25 years, the mortgage, the kids, the secret accounts, and the fact that my mother-in-law basically helped him lie to me for decades. While I waited for her to write back, I started a folder on my desktop called Legal Stuff. I spent the rest of the night downloading every bank statement I could find. I found the joint account, the savings, and those little transfers to the private account Mark thought I didn't know about. Then I saw he'd been paying for a separate life insurance policy, and the beneficiary wasn't me or the kids, it was Sandy. I just stared at the screen. I think I actually forgot how to breathe for a second. I just kept thinking 25 years. I gave this man 25 years of my life for nothing. The next morning, I just tried to act normal, which was honestly the hardest part. I made coffee and toasted a bagel, even asking Mark if he'd seen the mail just so he wouldn't suspect anything. "On the counter, Kay," he said, leaning against the fridge and scrolling through his phone. He gave me that smile, that one, where he acts like I'm just being difficult. "You seem better today." "I think the space this weekend helped." I just nodded and didn't say anything. I picked up the mail, saw a flyer for a landscaping company and an HOA notice about the grass being too high, and just threw them in the recycling. Sarah Jenkins emailed me back at 10:15 a.m. and wanted to talk right away. I told Mark I had a work thing and locked myself in the office. Look, since you guys never actually signed a license, it's a mess, Sarah told me. You aren't getting a traditional divorce settlement, but you have evidence of a long-term partnership and financial commingling. You've paid into the house and managed the assets, so we can argue resulting trust. Basically, we say you didn't just give him money and labor for 25 years, you invested it. We can go after the house, the accounts, and maybe a settlement because of the fraud regarding the license. I asked how long it would take. If we do this right, we don't give him time to move the money, she said. We file for a freeze on the shared assets first, then we negotiate. He won't want this to go to trial, especially with his mother involved. He can't afford a public record of this. I thanked her and hung up. I had a lot of energy, but it wasn't like a movie. It just felt practical, like I was finally cleaning out a really messy closet. For the next 2 weeks, I lived a double life. I did the laundry, kept the kitchen clean, and even went to a bridge lunch with some women from the neighborhood. We spent an hour complaining about how the grocery store switched to those self-checkout kiosks that keep saying, "There's an unexpected item in the bagging area." I just sat there and smiled while my phone was buzzing in my purse with texts from Sarah about the property appraisal. Mark just went back to his usual routine. He'd forget how the dishwasher worked, or he'd leave damp gym clothes on the bathroom floor, and then yell for me to find his socks. "I can't find my blue socks, Kay. Did you move them?" I'd just walk in, pick the socks up off the floor where he'd dropped them, and hand them to him. "See," he'd say, laughing. "I don't know what I'd do without you. You're the only one who knows where anything is." I looked at him and realized he actually believed it. He thought I handled everything, because that was just my personality. Not because I chose to. He thought I'd always be there to find his socks and balance the Vanguard account. Around 10 days in, I had to tell the kids they're in college now, and they'd always seen their father as this great guy in the community. I didn't want to do it over the phone, so I had them both come home for the weekend. We sat in the living room, and I just told them about Sandy, the other child, and the marriage license. I didn't make it a big deal or cry. I just gave them the facts. The room got really quiet. Just that kind of silence where you can hear the clock ticking. My daughter started crying, and my son just stared at Mark, who had walked in halfway through. Mark tried to play it off with the "it's complicated" thing. He tried to tell them I was misinterpreting things, and that I was having some kind of breakdown. "I don't know where this is coming from, Kay. Are you feeling okay?" he asked. Then he looked at the kids. "Maybe we should get your mother checked out. She's been acting really erratic lately. She's just stressed. We're working through things." My son stood up and walked out of the room without saying a word. That was when I knew the quiet part was over. The following Monday, I woke up at 5 a.m. I'd already spent a few days moving my jewelry, my passport, and the legal stuff folder into a small storage unit across town, just taking a few things in my car every time I went to the store. I went into the kitchen and noticed the garbage disposal was still making that rattling sound. I tried to fix it before, but I realized I didn't care anymore. I just wanted it to stay broken. I went back to the bedroom and grabbed the papers Sarah had prepared. They weren't divorce papers. They were a demand for a settlement and a notice that I was freezing the joint assets. I put the papers on the kitchen island, next to a bowl of bruised fruit. Then, I turned the heat down to 62. Because I wasn't about to pay to warm a house I was leaving. I walked into the garage and started the car. As I was pulling out, I saw my neighbor Mrs. Gable on her porch. She probably wanted to tell me. My trash cans were still on the curb, but I just waved and drove away. I found a small, clean Airbnb in a part of town where I didn't know anyone. I spent the first night just sitting on the bed, scrolling through my phone. Mark called me 22 times. The texts were just all over the place. 1 minute, he was worried and asking if I was okay. The next, he was asking who the hell Sarah Jenkins was. And then he was screaming in all caps that I was acting insane and ruining the family image. I didn't reply. I blocked his number. I blocked Carly's number, and I blocked everyone in that circle. 2 days later, Sarah called. "He's shaking," she said. "His lawyer contacted me. He's terrified of the resulting trust argument, because he knows if this goes to court, the marriage license and the second family become public record. He's offering a settlement. How much? I asked. More than a standard divorce, Sarah said. He wants to give you the house, a lump sum from his private accounts, and a monthly payment for 5 years if you sign an INDA and keep the separation quiet. I sat there for a minute. I thought about that house, scrubbing the baseboards with bleach, the leaking dishwasher, and the rattling disposal. I don't want the house, I said. You don't? No, I want him to keep it. I want him to deal with the HOA and the leaking pipes and the neighbors. I want him to live there and figure out how to run the place himself. I told Sarah to get more cash and a full transfer of the Vanguard funds into my name. I wanted the money and the security, but I didn't want a single piece of furniture from that house. The settlement took another month. I didn't see Mark once everything went through the lawyers. He tried to send me a long handwritten apology letter, but Sarah just told me about it, and I told her to shred it the day the money hit my account. I went back to the mall. I didn't return the leggings, I'd given up on that. But I went into a high-end skincare store and bought the most expensive serum they had. I didn't know if it actually worked, but I liked the way the glass bottle felt. I spent the afternoon at a cafe, drinking a latte, and looking at apartments in a city 3 hours away. I wanted a modern kitchen and a garbage disposal that actually worked. As I was leaving, I saw a woman who looked a bit like Santa blonde hair, denim jacket. My heart sped up for a second. But then she turned around and it wasn't her. I stood there for a moment, breathing in the cool air. I felt light, not happy exactly, but just quiet. I got back in my car and realized I'd left a bag of almond flour in the trunk from a few weeks ago. I pulled over at a gas station, opened the trunk, and threw it in the trash. Then I hit the highway, following the GPS away from the suburbs, the HOA, and the man who thought I was just the one who knew where the socks were. Anyway, I've got a new place now. The kitchen is small, but the garbage disposal actually works, and for the first time in 20 years I don't have to find anyone's socks. I think I'm finally okay.